Okay.
My name is James Rieselman. I started working for Pinellas County Government December 2nd, 1985. I was with the Land Survey Division for almost 17 years. I worked my way up through the ranks, started as a entry-level surveyor, became a party chief. I am now a registered land surveyor for the state of Florida. I got my license after I left county employment. Over the years, it became obvious to me that there were many discrepancies as to where the taxpayers' money was being spent. I got to the point where I could not even feel good about going to work at my job. And don't get me wrong, I had a good job. I had over a month's paid vacation, 7 paid holidays, and a very comfortable living. But I got to the point that I felt I had to speak up. Now, I had been warned by those above me and men that had been there over 30 years whose attitude and demeanor I had a lot of respect for, and they said, "Jim, don't make waves. You're never going to make a difference." I eventually went in to the new county administrator, Stephen Spratt, who had came from Miami, with a set of role plans for a small job that was being done for one of the commissioners. This woman, Karen Seals, had just become a commissioner the week before.
What was her name?
Karen Seals,
And this is in what county?
Pinellas County, Florida.
And these people, where do they? And this. Okay.
I got called into my department head's office at 6:30 in the morning when I reported to work. And he said, quote unquote, "Karen is calling her first favor. She's been a commissioner less than a week. We shouldn't do this. But she has friends that own Jable Circuit, a very large company here in Pinellas County. And they're building a house on McMullen Booth Road, just off McMullen Booth Road. And they have an open ditch on their property and they want it piped shut. It's nothing we should be concerned about. The ditch lays flat. If we put pipe in, it's just going to lay there with water in it. It has no drainage value." But I spoke with Keith Wicks last night, and in fact, he's the one who called me, and he said, "Go ahead and do it." So, Jim, I'm telling you, take the crew out there today and get that job done. So I went out there that day with a crew, and I did a design survey to pipe shut a ditch on a private yard, which I already knew it was another one of those jobs that was going to be done and charged to a larger job like Phase 3 widening of McMullen Booth Road. I knew from other jobs I had done as favors for friends of the commissioners that a lot of these jobs, all the cost would be hidden in the construction of a large roadway in Pinellas County. That was the way it was done. The cost of something that was extra for a friend of the commissioner would be lost in the paperwork or the high expense of a large road improvement job. So I was out there doing that design survey that day with a guy that worked underneath me named Brian. I had 6 different engineers from downtown come out there, all of which had dropped everything they were doing from the design department to get involved in this little rush job. I say little job, but when I turn in my work, usually a design survey takes an average of a year to 18 months before all the permits are pulled, all the design work gets done, and then the job is designed and goes to construction. Well, by the next month, there was a highway crew out there laying the pipe, closing shut this yard on private property for friends of Karen Seals, the commissioner. The highway department, I seen from paperwork I came across, spent $55,000 piping shut that yard. I don't know what my department spent designing it because it was all done in a hurry and I didn't have access to those figures. But I did get a copy of the design sheet and stacked that away with some of the other documentation I had. It got to the point, like I'd already mentioned, I couldn't feel good about working for the county anymore. And heaven forbid you care about the taxpayer. I had, in a meeting more than once, stated to the chagrin of my superiors, "Wait a minute, gentlemen. The last time I checked, the taxpayers do pay our salary." And I guess it made enough waves that they didn't feel comfortable about me working there any longer. But they do have the attitude that the taxpayers' pockets are bottomless. I had worked on another job way before then, where they sent another crew out on a road design that boss of mine before I became a fire chief and I had done. And they had another lady that had just been promoted to fire chief go out and redo the whole survey. And my boss went into the man second in charge named Charles Getz and said, "Wait a minute, that's already in the book. Jim and I already did that. The only thing that's been changed has been 2 driveways that have been paved on those 3 streets that you're going to pave. They were going to be paved from a marl road to a pavement road." And yet this boss had this woman go out there and spend 3 months with a crew redoing a whole survey that was already done in the book. And I know in a way it was to give this woman experience with a crew. But they would rather have a crew go out and spend 3 months taxpayers' money doing a job that they could work with easier in the office than having the office people take the data that was already in the field book and enter it into a computer. Because after all, the taxpayers' pockets are bottomless. Well, I eventually went to Stephen Spratt, the man I've already mentioned. He became the new county administrator.
Now this is now where is Stephen? Are you talking about downtown Clearwater?
Downtown Clearwater, he is no longer county administrator. He has been let go along with Susan Cerruti, the county attorney, because of the recent exposure of the corruption involving the $250,000 that was paid to Jim Smith, the tax appraiser of Pinellas County, for a lot he sold that adjoins Brooker Creek along Lake Tarpon. Well, that hit the paper, and Stephen Spratt, the county administrator, and Susan Cerruti were let go. The commissioners are all still there. But when I went to Stephen Spratt, when he was a new county administrator, I showed him the plans they had for pipe and shut this private yard, and told him the whole story about how my bosses had filled me in, that it was illegal, we shouldn't be doing it, that it's her first favor as a new commissioner, but go ahead and get it done. And I said to him, either I just lost my job by coming to you, or you, like I do, care about the taxpayers, and you're going to do something to see that this sort of thing stops. I was illegally Baker acted by Pinellas County sheriffs. I had the head of detectives and about 12 detectives come to my home. And I knew that something like this might happen. I had gone to a psychiatrist. I had a paper that was 3 hours old saying that I was of sound mind and body. I had no mental deficiencies. And when I showed this to the head of detectives, when they were all in my home, to illegally Baker act me, he goes, "Jim, I know your paperwork is good, but I have been told I have to take you with me." So I was spent a week illegally Baker act by Pinellas County, got out, and I found out by my neighbors when I got home that those detectives spent 45 minutes in my home after they drove me away, gathering up materials. And they had gone through all my paperwork trying to get any documentation I had proving what I could, what I had about this job that was done for Karen Seals and her friends at Old Jable Circuit. They've got a lot of documentation, but the main plans were locked in my safe and they didn't have access to that. So somewhere in my paperwork I still have the documentation proving that job. Now, it's almost 17 years I was with the county. I was involved in other jobs. I'm sure with help I could get documentation on to prove that I'm not just talking to hear my head roar about the extending corruption and power these commissioners have in this county.
Well, they're trying to label you as being insane. I mean, that's why they Baker acted you, because if you went to anybody with this documentation information, they're going to look at your history, says this guy's been Baker acted, and they go on and on. Could you tell me about the situation of the park deal where there was the commissioners worked a deal on a park that was where they were going to put a park in, and how they made money off that?
Many times in the past, even some of my own bosses within my own department had the opportunity to make money off the taxpayers. This man is now dead. He had left the county shortly before I came there, but he had come off the job site, so I got to know him. He was a very nice guy, but he knew that the county was going to be interested in some property for an expansion. And he was able, because of his inside knowledge, to purchase this property and sell it to the county at a great profit, knowing that it was going to be taken by the county with the laws of eminent domain. Well, good for the community. With eminent domain, you have to sell at an agreed upon price, an appraised price. For the good of the taxpayers, they can use eminent domain to take right away from people for fiscal improvement projects. It's good law. It helps things get done. But when used in that sort of sense by people that have the inside knowledge to gain a profit, of course it's illegal.
Do you want to give this man's name?
He's dead. And what he made off the taxpayers is a drop in the bucket to other jobs I know of. And he was only doing what he learned from people that were above him that were making much more money. And he never did anything to curtail or destroy my career. So
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Then go ahead and keep going with the story. You said there was $2 million. It was purchased and then
there was a
resold.
property on Gulf Boulevard years ago that was a restaurant called Tiki Gardens. After the restaurant closed, it sat empty for years. No one would buy it. Well, the county had an idea to buy that property and make a park along Gulf Boulevard. And as usual, when things like that happen, there are opportunities for people with power to make money. A couple months before the county announced plans to purchase the property, a private developer went in and bought the property, and within the next few months it was sold to the taxpayers for a couple $1 million more. And I'd been around the county long enough and was able to see things and talk to a bunch of people that I worked with that were older, that knew what was going on. Then it was obvious the commissioners, a commissioner, all the commissioners, they called up one of the developer friends and said, hey look, we're interested in this property. Purchase it. We're going to make a park. And then the county agrees through the vote of the commissioners to purchase that property a short time later for a much greater price and expense to the taxpayers. Well, that extra expense is split under the table by those in control of how the funds are spent that they acquire from taxpayers. I also was involved in doing surveying with the penny for Pinellas tax years ago, when they voted an extra 1 penny sales tax in this county for 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, there was going to be a vote whether it would be continued for the next 5 years for further improvement projects. And I was made aware after the vote narrowly passed for the next 5 years how relieved those in charge were, because the taxpayers didn't know that the extra penny amount, which was millions of dollars, had already been spent for the next 5 years. If the vote would have passed for the next 5 years, they would have had to scrape to come up with answers to where all this money went that was going to be collected for the next 5 years that was already spent. So by them being able to lobby this penny for Pinellas tax through for the next 5 years, they were able to get away with anyone finding out that they'd already spent 10 years worth of money that they'd only supposed to have spent 5 years that they'd collected. I have worked on private property many times at taxpayers' expense. I have been involved in the repiping of a golf course on private property. I have been sent out by my superiors to investigate where central air conditioning systems and things have gone from property that was taken through eminent domain for road widening projects. Eventually one department head was basically let go or retired early because they found out that he was going off these homes with some private contractors and taking away all these things they could take money off of on the side. But things like that are dropping the bucket to what the commissioners are doing to the taxpayers in this county. When I went to Stephen Spratt and showed him the road plans for that job in particular that was being done as a first favor for the new commissioner, Karen Seals, and said, look, as I've repeated, either you're an honest man, you care about the taxpayers as I do, or I just lost my job. I went through the humiliation of being taken away by the head of detectives in Pinellas County and getting out a week later to find out from my neighbors that they'd spent a long time in my house after that. I was not allowed to go back to work. I was deemed a threat. They were scared of me. I've never heard anybody.
So you lost your job then?